Hello and welcome to the Cyberden, your weekly dose of tech and games. I, Jake the Voice, will be chatting with none other than professional actor Nick Apostolides, best known as the voice actor and motion capture artist for Leon Kennedy from the Resident Evil 2 remake. Thanks for coming, mate.
Hey, thank you so much, Jake, for having me. Thanks for your patience. And I gotta say, you have an incredible voice for this.
Oh, you flirt. Anyway, well, let's talk more about you, of course. Let's talk about the early days of your acting career. What actually inspired you to enter the world of acting and voiceovers?
Well, acting came first. Voiceover was about a decade into my career. As a kid, I was always watching your stereotypical action movies. I grew up with like the Terminator franchise, Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, and all those Indiana Jones. And I loved that as a kid so much. I never really thought to pursue it going into a career into my adulthood. But it wasn't until I was working in hospitality, working in like Disney World and then in hotels in Boston, where a lot of people just told me that I should give it a whirl because I just came off as very genuine when I speak all the time, no matter where I was, what I was doing, and they would just tell me that acting is all in the eyes, and they said you're a genuine person, you should try it, and I did, and now about 11 years later, here I am.
So how is it that you were able to actually transition into on-camera work? How did you break into that market?
Well, fortunately, I started in a very small market, which is Boston. I did not start in LA, which is very tough. So it was a smaller ocean, a lot less competition. You start with student films. Boston is a college town, so they had all these nice film programs, and you start small. You work up to slightly bigger projects in the independent film world, which is easier to get into than the film and TV, which you find here out in LA. I started small and I built my portfolio. I learned what I was good at, what I was not good at. I learned what to work on. I trained, I practiced. And then after about 3 years, I felt comfortable and confident. I moved to LA and started working right away. And that's advice I give to everybody, by the way, who start in smaller markets. I say definitely start there. Don't rush to LA because if you can't book work in a small market, you're probably not going to book work in a giant market like LA.
So you've starred in films like The Suffering and Five and many other kind of flicks out there. Would you say you've got many fond memories on camera? Would you say it's quite a challenging and demanding field of work?
Of course. Like I said, if you look at the scope of my career, which it is really small and still in its beginnings, I have far more memories on camera than strictly voiceover. I'm still training in voiceover because I know far less about it than I do with on-camera stuff. It's obviously in the same industry. It's the same type of art form, I would say, but it is very different where you have to create the whole character, just your voice. Whereas on camera, over the years, I have learned that I'm a very nuanced actor with subtle expressions and body language, and I can't use that per se in back of a microphone when nobody sees my face. And so it's really been a big transition. But for 7-8 years, I was doing action movies and heavy dramas and developing my style of acting. And yeah, I have a trillion, like countless memories of how my journey has been since probably around 2010.
Not to mention you've done things like motion capture, stunts, firearm training as well. All of this just sounds really, really challenging. So where did you train to do all this stuff? And what was the experience like having to break off even further into a brand new field like that?
With the motion capture for Resident Evil, it was actually the first motion capture I'd ever done. It's not very different than, say, theater acting or just very physical acting, which I was very comfortable with. I had a lot of firearms training and stunt training through various friends and filmmakers over the years in the independent world. A friend of mine, James Poirier, he's one of my best friends in the entire world, and he trained me with all of my firearms, and he got me really into like the action world early on. And this is about a decade ago, and part of the audition process for Resident Evil was they wanted to see how you move with a weapon. And fortunately, I had that training. I had the on-camera stuff, I had the action stuff, I had the stunt stuff, and just all kind of fell into place.
Speaking of your first actual role in world of video games, of course, Resident Evil 2 Remake, what were your experiences like working for Capcom, and how long did it take to record all of the lines and perform motion capture for the game?
Well, that was quite a drawn-out process. Believe it or not, I think the first time we filmed was around 2016, and the game didn't come out till 2019. So it was off and on sessions with the team from Capcom would come from Japan. We'd work for a week or two. Then they would retreat back to Japan and they would develop that section of the game. And then they'd come back maybe 2 months later. It was really off and on. And the voiceover sessions were separately recorded on different days. That was just strictly in the booth. But if you look at all the cutscenes, all of the breakaway cinema scenes that we did mocap for, that was full performance capture. So we recorded the voices during those scenes in real time. I think when you play the character in game where you're controlling Leon and fighting, those were strictly VO. So we'd go in the booth and there was no mocap involved. So it's a different process. But working with Capcom was just a dream come true. I don't know if you're a fan of that developer, but I've been playing Capcom games for 30 years. Legit 30 years. And to work for a company like that who have provided you with just too many hours of fun entertainment over the course of your life, that's just a dream come true.
So what about voicing Leon Kennedy, the rookie cop turned zombie killer? Would you say you enjoyed playing Leon? And if so, why?
Are you kidding? Well, I've been a Resident Evil fan since 1998. It's my favorite series of all time. It always was. And then when I got this opportunity, I mean, how would you feel? you know, it was it's still surreal at this point. I'm talking to you. I've done a bunch of interviews. I've been to conventions now. I'm enjoying the success of the game, and this is a completely surreal experience for me. Something I can always look back 30 years from now and say that was a damn good time. Having said that, there was a lot of pressure because I'm very well aware and I'm very fond of the performances that have been given in the past by other talented actors. I wasn't trying to be better than anybody. My hero is Paul Mercier. He voiced Leon in RE4 back in the day, and he was a hero of mine. And I just wanted to do the character justice and the game justice and the developer justice because there was a lot riding on it.
And you certainly delivered a lot of justice to a lot of people out there in the world.
I'm just happy that they enjoy the game. It has done pretty well. It sold a lot of copies. People were generally really happy with it in the direction that it's going in, and I'm just humbled and happy to be a part of it. That's all.
Do you have any favourite lines or moments in the game? I did hear that apparently you had a bit of an accident during one of the death recordings, if you want to talk about that as well.
Yes. Yeah. See, I'm a method actor. You probably know what that is. For those who don't know what that is, method actors, I don't know how to sum it up really easy. They like to feel the conditions that their characters are going through. So, for instance, if your character is really like overtired and underslept, they will deprive themselves of sleep. They like to feel what's going on in the body. And I'm very much like that. It works for me on camera. And so during the death scenes, we have to record all the possible deaths that Leon could go through, whether he gets impaled, he gets burned alive, blown up by a grenade, eaten by a zombie, eaten by a dog. You got to record all these different ones so they can throw it in with an algorithm when you're playing. And so the very last session that we had, the director was prepping me for a death from probably the tyrant. And he's like, imagine this big guy, Mr. X, he grabs you by the neck and he lifts you up and he's strangling you and you're gasping for your last breath. And then he takes his big claw and maybe impales your stomach. And I want to hear that gurgle of blood. And he just really described the scenario. He said, all right, go for it. This is the last one. And then we'll go home. And then I think we're done, like for the game, like wrapped. So with my last take, I wanted to go all out. And what I'd done is I threw some water in my throat to get that gargly sound. And I literally just like after 4 hours of just screaming and panting and breathing heavy and fighting efforts, I was really just a little lightheaded already. And what I did was I went out on my tippy toes and I placed my hand around my neck and I just squeezed a bit and got that gurgle and my brain had just taken it, like it was done. And I think I deprived myself of air and I literally choked myself out and everything just went black and I just fell back like a tree falling in the forest. I fell in the booth and Tom, the director, thought that it was part of the gag and part of just me doing my thing until he saw my leg just twitching and shaking and my face was complete like Casper ghost white and I literally passed out. And so you can never say that I don't go all out for my roles.
Here's a hypothetical question. Let's say that Mr. X, the tyrant, was stomping around and pursuing you. What would be your game plan?
Well, I don't have any weapons on me. I have an X-Acto blade I'm looking at right now, but I would probably run for my life. I don't think I'd try to fight that guy unless I had a very big gun.
Good plan. You could take inspiration from, let's say, Looney Tunes cartoons, just like lure him into a cupboard, he lights a match and it's just suddenly full of TNT or something like that. I think could work.
Well, that could work. I might even just try to ask if he wants to just be friends or make up like two adults, and then he'd probably punch me, and then I'd just run like a scared little baby.
Ever since the game's release, there's been so many fans out there making countless mods, parodies, memes, fan art, etc. of Resident Evil 2 Remake.
They're funny.
Oh yeah, they are so funny. Any favorite ones that you've seen?
Yes, I'm gonna go over my favorites in just a second, but I do want to say, if anyone's out there listening, any people that create mods, I'm still waiting for a Mr. X to Oreo mod. That's what I want to see. I want to see him as a giant Oreo cookie. Now the other thing is the favorite mods. Definitely like Terminator. Thomas the Tank Engine's hilarious. Let me see. I just saw a really cool mod where they replaced Mr. X and Leon. So Mr. X is actually a giant Leon, and Leon chokes out Mr. X. I just saw it like 3 days ago. That's pretty cool. These people are talented. I don't know how they do that stuff. That's tech way above my head, but I'm thoroughly impressed.
Let's talk a bit about the narrative-driven Life is Strange series. You play as Frank Bowers and Charles Erickson. So what was it like working on a title that really tugged at people's heartstrings? Instead of going around shooting zombies in the face and splattering brains everywhere, you're going for something that's a lot more, shall we say, dramatic?
Yeah, that's a very, very different franchise for sure. And when I had just booked the first role I played was young Frank Bowers. I didn't know much about the franchise, and I got introduced to it pretty fast. And I have a deep appreciation for that franchise. I understand why it's so relatable to people because of the choices that you can make. You can shape your experience playing that game, and all these scenarios. They're so familiar. There's such a familiar aspect when you play. I recently played episode Life is Strange 2, episode 2, where I did Charles Erickson again, also from Captain Spirit. I played that. And it's just like the scenarios are just, they're heartfelt. Like whoever really wrote those and took the time to understand like the human condition and the way it can change so quickly it's pretty amazing. It really blew me away. And I understand why the fan base is deep and loyal and growing very fast.
Any moments in the game that kind of stuck out to you?
It was just with Charles Erickson, especially. His relationship with his son was just a really layered one, and this guy had such remorse for his habits and what he'd been through in the past with his wife, his late wife, and I just think it's so heavy. The subject matter is heavy, and I don't have a kid. I don't have a son. And when I was acting with the young actor, in the booth, and we're going back and forth, and all the scenarios where Charles is drunk and he knows that he could be a better father and he should be a better father and he wasn't. There's just such it was just a layered performance of what it required, and I had to kind of dive deep. Now, as a method actor, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't have a son. It's hard for me to relate to that, and so all I could rely on was really just getting myself into a pretty negative headspace, just a darker headspace to bring some of that to life. So I don't know. I'm a big fan now.
Do you have any dream roles in the world of video games?
Oh my God, yes. Anything Capcom, Castlevania, anything Castlevania related. I'd love to be in a Street Fighter, a Super Smash Bros. I would love to play a character in a military game. I'm doing motion capture on a military game right now, doing a lot of military stunts, which is fun. But I want to play a character that you can follow throughout a game. Anything like a Call of Duty, like Medal of Honor, something like that. I just honestly I have such an appreciation for video games because I've been playing them for 30 years that to exist inside of them and be a part of their history is just the most fascinating thing to me as far as like viable careers go. I could voice a million characters that I didn't necessarily care too much about. I would enjoy the work and I would be grateful for it. But to live in video games, like for instance, Resident Evil it's just like it's a treasure in my life.
Are there any other video games out there that you would consider your favorites or favorite franchises, aside from Resident Evil, of course, one of my personal favorites as well?
I grew up with Capcom games and even like some old Konami stuff. Like I'm a huge fan of like Metal Gear. Like I said, Castlevania was a really big influence in my life. The Final Fantasy series, Final Fantasy VII is up there on my top 5 games of all time. I'm a big fan of Super Smash Bros. Because I've been playing those with my little brother since he was able to play video games, starting with N64. There's just so many franchises and even standalone games that I would die to be a part of, like their sequels or anything. Um, yeah, it's like bring it on. I play a lot, like Rainbow Six. I started getting the first person shooters with James, the guy who got me into firearms and training like that. He introduced me really to like first person shooters and Splinter Cell. Anything Tom Clancy, I would love to be a part of for sure.
Now let's move away from the world of video games. Let's just talk a bit about your life. And, well, what do you like to do outside of acting? I heard that you do a lot of traveling and a bit of building as well. Tell us more about that.
Been a builder all my life. One of my first hobbies ever in my life when I was about 6 years old was Legos. I've been the first job I ever said I wanted to do or thought I wanted to do was to be an architect because I loved building with Legos. And I was one of those guys who I would get like a castle set, and I would get that for Christmas or a birthday. And I would construct it, I would build it with the directions, and then I got bored after about a half hour. I'd take the whole thing apart and use the parts and build my own castle. And after that, I took after my father. He's a jack of all trades. He's a carpenter, a bit of a plumber. He works on cars, like automotive and all that stuff. Actually, he knows a lot about a lot in the trades, and he taught me how to paint. He taught me everything, and I just fell in love with that. And then I worked in the trades professionally long before I was an actor, and then I started to transition those handyman type fabrication skills, the industrial skills, into fabricating props and wardrobe for movies and independent film in Boston. And then I began acting after that. So it's all coming full circle now, where now I'm on camera. I'm working on this building documentary show. We go all around the world and we help communities in need. We assist nonprofit organizations with very particular goals, and we help them make it happen wherever they are. And we are building for real. This is not reality TV. It's more of a documentary style show. And we talk about the challenges of what it's like to be in a third world country, where if we're 3 hours up in the mountains in Thailand, we're not going to drag a table saw up there. So we're going to use whatever tools we can. We're going to adopt some of their methods. We're going to learn from the people there who use hatchets and they cut bamboo. They don't use 2x4s like we have in the States. They use bamboo because it's an abundant free source from the jungle. And it's a really interesting format. And the parameter of every episode is that we are just helping large amounts of people and making a big impact. So the work is fulfilling. I'm using my two hands. I'm seeing the world. It's fantastic. It's one of the best opportunities I've ever had in my entire life.
Would you say that you're a movie fan or perhaps a music lover?
Both.
Any favourites of each?
I would really have to think about that for movies. There are so many that have affected me in a big way and inspired me and influenced me, my style of acting. A lot of the ones I mentioned earlier, like the Indiana Jones franchise, Lethal Weapon franchise, the Terminator franchise, those just kind of shaped like what I want to do with acting. But then, of course, there's a lot of the dramatic roles that I've emulated over the years, where I like to play anti-heroes. Like ordinary people who are put in an extraordinary situation with a lot of layered performance. It's not just one side, where you're not just like an '80s badass. That doesn't interest me. I like a vulnerable character with a tough outer facade. That's how I've been described by some friends who know me well, and that's kind of what I emulate for that. But as far as music goes, I think some of the biggest influences I've had in music, as far as like shaping my attitude on life, really has been maybe like Metallica, Alice in Chains, Ozzy, like those types of bands. It just gave me this really like a raw energy that I carry with me even 2 decades later after listening to them. And they've been a big inspiration. But as a guitarist, I'm a musician. I appreciate all kinds of music, really.
I bet you'll be pleased to know that's kind of like some of the music we like to play here on the Cyberden, actually. A bit of Metallica, a bit of Alice in Chains.
Alrighty, Alice in Chains. Those are three of my favorite bands, and Ozzy too. I'm sure. Do you guys like Ozzy and Black Sabbath?
Yeah, we like to play a bit of that as well. In fact, now that you mention it, I'm currently wearing my Alice in Chains Jar of Flies t-shirt as I'm doing this interview.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's awesome.
Nick, thank you so much for coming on board to this interview. It's been an absolute blast.
Yeah, this has been fun, and thank you for having me again. Thank you for your patience, all like these many months. I really appreciate that you took the interest to talk to me. I hope the fans take a little bit something away from this, and I'm really looking forward to hearing it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, anything you'd like to say to all of your fans out there and fans of the Resident Evil and Life is Strange series?
Yeah, I do actually. Look, I just want to say these games and these franchises, they would not be what they are, and they would not continue on without the fan base. And now that we have social media, love it or hate it, it does have its uses and advantages and benefits. And the more you guys talk about the games and share the games, your moments, your experiences, the more you bond with friends and play these games online, it makes a difference. Don't ever think that you're wasting your time or you've got nothing better to do, because I've been playing video games for 30 years and they are just different than they are back then. I think they do bring people together, and as a fellow fan myself, I say just keep on doing what you're doing, because we get the opportunity for more. Like, personally, I'm very excited for Resident Evil 3. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the gameplay and the trailers. That game looks horrifying, and it wouldn't happen if, let's say, Resident Evil 2 wasn't successful, if people didn't like it, and tell Capcom that they want more. So that's it. Just keep it up, guys.
And I'd like to thank all of my wonderful listeners out there for once again tuning into another great interview on the Cyberden, your weekly dose of tech and games. Nick, thanks for coming on board, and let me just say, watch out for those zombies.
You're a legend, man. Okay, I'm looking forward to hearing this.
Hey, this is Leon Kennedy from the Resident Evil 2 Remake. When I'm not fighting zombies, I'm listening to Jake the Voice on my favorite radio show, the Cyberden. Maybe you should do the same.